It's rock and roll!
Welcome to the jungle. Wait, no, that'll be another episode. Welcome to Look It's Rock and Roll Podcast, Episode 2. But today we are going to dive into a jungle, so to speak. We're going to take two albums and combine them into one. And they are, of course, Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion 1, Use Your Illusion 2. 30 songs, actually 29 if you can consider that Don't Cry has two versions, but it's basically the same song. We're going to turn it into, what do we decide on? A 12-song album. And this is all because Guns have just announced that they're going to be hitting the road on tour again this summer. Lonnie's probably already bought his tickets.
I am. I'm going to Indianapolis.
Yep. So what better way than to dig into what was a really fun release back in the day. But, you know, rather than talking about the tour, let's get each one of your entry points into Guns N' Roses. And I guess I'm forgetting that this is a different show than usual, so I should be introducing you. We've got Ken.
Hello.
Mark. And Lonnie.
Hello.
And,
Hello.
of course, I'm Julian, admin on a message board, but we're not talking about that band. So, Mark, let's start with you. What was your entry point into Guns N' Roses? When did you get into them? And, which is your... pretty much your Illusion go-to album, which volume?
Okay. Well, actually, I got into Guns pretty early. Actually, right when they pretty much started, back when Appetite came out. I was in high school still, and what had happened actually is that there was this guy in my class. I'll never forget him. He was like a really tall guy, long hair, skinny, glasses, and he was one of those guys that you'd always go to. He'd always find like the hippest records because he went to England a lot, like with his family. So he'd always come back and bring these records back with him and stuff. So, and he was talking about this band called Guns N' Roses in my geography class. That was it, and he was saying, the Guns, man, they're really cool, and you should really check them out. I saw them. They opened for the Cult. They were touring with them at that time. And he said that they totally killed the Cult. Like, they were way better than the Cult. It's like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And then they ended up going out with Iron Maiden for the Seven Sun Tour. As apparently, for some leg of it, they went out with them as well. And but I got introduced to them very early at that point. And I remember not shortly after he discussed it and talked to me about it, I did seek out Appetite, and I grabbed it and was highly impressed with it. And not long after that, the infamous Live at the Ritz show was broadcast on Much Music. And I was like, what the hell is this? This is like really like, it was like watching a new modern era Rolling Stones. It's like exactly what it reminded me. I was like, wow, this is like totally like the Stones if they were to be formed now. Slash out of it completely, Axl, all lippy and rude on stage. And, it was really cool. And they were sloppy as hell. Slash was playing solos out of key on Night Train and stuff like that. It was unbelievable just watching this stuff. But it was something that was sorely needed at the time because of all the hair and kind of, glamish metal at the time. We were so oversaturated with it. We needed some more, back to basics, Jack Daniels rock and roll. And my favorite Illusion has got to be Volume 2 for sure, hands down.
Yeah, I'm kind of guessing that's going to be the general consensus, since it is the general consensus everywhere else. Ken, how about you? Your entry point into Guns N' Roses?
Yeah, I remember first hearing Welcome to the Jungle. I think it was in my car. I heard that on the radio, like FM radio, when they played rock and roll. And I thought, I kind of like, oh, what is this? I haven't heard this before. And it was quite a rocking song. I thought, this stuff is one of those, it's one of those songs where you hear it the first time, you're like, this is good stuff. And so I think I probably, hopefully I found out right away who that was, if the DJ said who it was. And I'm sure I went out and bought it as soon as possible. So that was the first time that I was aware of them, and I bought the first album, then, which is a great album, the first album. And I remember, I saw them open for Aerosmith. down in Mountain View, California, which was quite a show. A good pairing there. And they rocked it. And of course, Aerosmith is always good. But yeah, that was the entry point, and it was quite a cool thing to have a new band come on board that had a lot of good heavy rockin' music.
What's your favorite volume of these two
Oh,
albums?
well, it's easy. That's number 2.
Yeah. All right, Lonnie, give us the word.
So I got into them. I was young, and I got into them early. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, as crazy as that sounds. But again, like Kiss, I had an older, again, kind of like the way I like Kiss, I had an older brother who got me into them. My older brother's 4 years older than me, so he might have been about 13 at the time. So he's a little more
target market
in the know of what's going on in music. And he had a buddy that had Appetite on cassette. And what did you do in 1988? Well, you had your dual cassette player, and if you had something your buddy wanted, you dubbed it for him. So he had a dubbed copy of Appetite. And I was like, I can remember I was in the room next door. I'm like, what is that's not Destroyer he's listening to over there. What is he listening to today? And I loved it immediately. I'm like, what's the name of this band? Guns N' Roses. And just the name itself is cool enough to an 8-year-old kid, like 8 or 9-year-old kid, like I was at the time. You know what I mean? Just, that sounds cool. And then, this the music sounds cool on top of it. So, eventually, he saved up a few dollars and got a cassette of Appetite. And then I saved up a few dollars and got a cassette of Appetite, because that's just what you did. You didn't want to, I don't want a dub copy. I want to look at the lyrics. I want to pull out my cassette jacket. I don't want to just borrow his stuff. So, it was early on, and I loved them, from the beginning. And living in St. Louis, I guess my story about Guns N' Roses is I wasn't at the Riot show because I was only maybe 11 or 12 when that show happened. And I asked my parents to go, but I was not allowed to go, for obvious reasons. 12-year-old kid going to that, first of all, it's a little ridiculous. But, I've, there's some cool stories about living here over the years, and the court case and everything that went on with that. So, but my favorite Illusion, of course, is number 2, just like the rest of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, what's really cool is 86 was just such a fantastic year. If there was one band that was the hype of 1986, it was Guns N' Roses in Hit Parade or Circus, any of the rock mags. They were just mentioned that they were going to be recording. Their album was coming out. The EP was about to hit the streets, and they were just hyped the shit out of. And that was the year, basically, I got all in with music, having gotten into kind of the heavy metal scene in December 85. So I had that whole year waiting for Guns N' Roses to release something. And then Lies came out, or, Live Like a Suicide. And I went down to the cassette store, Music City in Binghamton, New York, and they had a cassette copy of that. They didn't have the record, so they had Live Like a Suicide on tape, and I bought a Great White album instead because the cover.
Great White.
Nice. And I went back the following week. It was gone. Never did end up with it. Ended up finding a copy of the vinyl, so I was in from the beginning. And then Appetite came out. Because 86, you had all that great music. You had Zodiac, Mind Warp, High Priest of Love came out in 86. Night Songs, Cinderella, who, some said they're the next Aerosmith. And then Guns comes along and they're like, no, this is the next fucking Aerosmith. Look at these guys, Marlboros and Jack Daniels, and the big hair that Cinderella had. So it was just great music. And, following on from there, I never got to see them live in the day. I even missed when Zodiac toured with Guns N' Roses, which really kills me because that's my guilty pleasure band. So I missed it. But like the rest of you, it's volume 2, which is my go-to, and my CDs tell the story. This is still, my original copy from living in Europe, and I didn't have a copy of one until I came back to the States and bought one then. So definitely Volume 2. When we talk about these albums, there's 30 songs dropping on you in a single day back in 1991. That's a hell of a lot of music at a time when, most bands had only just started expanding to take full advantage of a CD. And both of these are 75 minutes of music. Before that, you had, Def Leppard, 63 minutes for Hysteria. I think actually New Jersey came later, so there wasn't a whole lot out at the time that had that amount of music just jammed into it. Mark, what were your initial impressions of receiving 30 songs to try and digest?
Well, it was definitely overwhelming at first because you didn't, you wanted. There were certain songs that I was already aware of before. I mean, Civil War was being played on the radio. Knocking on Heaven's Door was being played on radio, and those are both on 2. But of course, you wanted to start on Volume 1, to just check it out. But you can't help but be anxious to get to Volume 2. So my first time I listened to both of them, I kind of half listened to 1 because I was so anxious to get to Volume 2. But then as I listened to them more and more, there was obviously definitely more things that kind of started to show itself as I listened to it. Volume 2 had more of the rocking stuff I found, like Locomotive and Breakdown was really cool, I liked, and stuff like that. And I found that Volume 1 had a little bit more melodic, a little bit more laid back stuff. Like it had The Garden, and it had Don't Cry, and You Ain't the First One, kind of like a more laid back kind of song. But I found that there was a bit of a variation in it, right? But Volume 2 has always spoken to me. I thought that it has some of Slash's greatest guitar solos on the second volume, and he has such a great guitar tone. I mean, I've studied that, from top to bottom. I read Slash's book so many times, especially the sections where he talked about recording those records and stuff like that, just to get little, tidbits on what he used and stuff like that. I really liked the tone of his guitar on that. And it was always interesting to read that Izzy Stradlin was one of those guys that they just went in, he recorded while they did drums and bass, and that was it. If they wanted him to record again, he was like, nah. He was just one of those like, I record with the bass and drums and that's it. Whatever's there, you use. That's why if you look at some of the songs, a lot of the double guitaring is done by Slash. Even like left, right on your stereo, sometimes Slash had to double it because Izzy was just like one take and that's it.
Yep, Izzy, so important to the band.
Lonnie, yeah.
What about you and your reaction to the both volumes when you first had to approach them?
Me? Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Me? Okay. All right.
Only if you want to. I mean,
I didn't
if you're
hear
playing,
you.
if you're shy today,
Well,
that's okay.
it's interesting. Well, it's interesting because over the summer of '91, MTV played the hell out of "You Could Be Mine." It was on all the time, and that video is so incredible. I mean, talk about the greatest commercial Terminator 2 could possibly have. It was that video. And MTV played the hell out of it all summer. And I can remember going to the record store or the Best Buy and looking for the album. Nope, it's not out. It's not out. When is it coming out? No one, and for a long time, over the summer of '91, you didn't know when it was going to come out. And it wasn't until late August I was at the mall. And you go to the music store at the mall, and somebody had up "Use Your Illusion" arriving here September 17th, 1991. I was like, yes, finally, there's a date. I can remember dragging my dad up to Best Buy on a Saturday in July of '91, and then dragging him up there the next day on a Sunday in '91 just to see if it came out to that day. And he's like, why? We're not doing this every day. But I mean, I finally had a date, and I couldn't wait. So, up until recently, obviously, music always came out on Tuesday. So my parents knew I wanted to get it. And they made me a deal. They said, all right, you can go get it after school, but you can't go get it until all your homework's done. Because once you go buy it, you're not going to listen. You're not going to do any homework. once you go up there and do it. Like, all right, fine. So like at the time I was in 7th grade, and at the time I was getting a lot of homework, and it was kind of crazy. So like I knew I was getting loaded up with homework. So, like all throughout the day, I'm like every chance I could get, like I'm like going to do a quick math problem and just try to, if I sped up my homework just by 2 minutes, every chance I got all day, I'm like in the car and going home from school, doing homework the whole way home from school, get home, doing my homework, doing my English, doing my math, doing history, just getting it done. And I got done a little before 7 o'clock, and they go, all right, you can go up there. So I guess my brother Todd drove us up there. I don't know. I guess he drove. I don't remember if he drove or my mom or dad gave us a ride up there. But we went up to Best Buy, which is really close to the house. And it's all pre-internet, so you really didn't know. I mean, I knew what the covers were going to look like, but I didn't know what songs were going to be on which one. You know what I mean? I knew that You Could Be Mine was going to be on Use Your Illusion 2 because of the music video. It said Use Your Illusion 2 on it. But I didn't know if Knocking on Heaven's Door was going to be on one, if it was going to be on 2. I didn't know. And I'd already bought the single for You Could Be Mine. But I really wanted a good version of Knocking on Heaven's Door. And Todd goes, okay, whichever one you buy, I'll buy the other one. So I ended up buying Use Your Illusion 2, and he ended up buying Use Your Illusion 1 on CD. Both of us bought it on CD. And then we did, exactly what every other brothers did, is we came home and made a cassette for, the opposite one for each other. That's what everybody did in America that night. Not everybody. I guess more people were blessed than us, and they bought each other, but, So, but I mean, I was only able to listen to a couple of songs that night before I went to bed. Before the weekend came, and I was really able to sit down and digest all 30 songs. It was mind-blowing how different it was from Appetite in a way, and it was mind-blowing how different just one song was from the next, having the Garden of Eden and November Rain really close to each other on Use Your Illusion 1, and how you could go from Estranged into You Could Be Mine on Use Your Illusion 2. The whole thing is very epic in the sense there's so much music to digest all at one time, and it was so vastly different from what you heard on Appetite, and so vastly different just song to song on the 2 albums. So it took a while to really fully digest everything that you were hearing, but I loved it. And I mean, you guys have heard us on KissFAQ. I still listen to those albums just regularly, and anytime I get a chance to talk about them, I do. So that's a long-winded answer. So Ken, why don't you talk for a little while and shut me up?
Okay, I'll go. I think we were pretty much clamoring for the new music from them, and I remember it's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get it when it comes out, and because you're expecting it's gonna be pretty darn good, based on their prior efforts. So yeah, I got it, and it's a lot of music, like I said, to consume, and honestly, I think really they should have just left it at one CD, in my opinion. Now, looking back, that they should have just had one CD and maybe saved some of those songs for another album or release or whatever other things later on. But that didn't happen. But so we got a lot of music. I mean, at the beginning, it was like, okay, yeah, this is a lot of stuff to listen to. And then obviously certain things, I'm more for the melodic kind of stuff. So I think more of the melodic stuff was on the number, the second disc, the blue disc, or blue covered. And I think I did like Lonnie. I think I did go back and I put it on cassette because the car had, I think, a cassette deck. Mm-hmm. So I taped it, and I probably put most of the second disc on the tape, and some of the songs that were on the first one, certain ones I left out, and kind of like already made my best of at that point of the 2. So yeah, it was a cool thing, because no band was doing double albums like that at that time and with that much music.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing while waiting for these albums to come out was, again, the hype. We talk about the hype with Appetites, everything that led up to 87 and the release of the debut album, because there were a couple of bands that were really had the shit hyped out of them at the time. Roxy the Angels, direct competitor with Guns N' Roses, who were basically kept from releasing their shit in favor of Guns N' Roses getting their stuff out, were hyped to shit. But in 91, this was going to be a grand statement of how awesome Guns N' Roses was. It was going to be their physical graffiti. It was going to be their Exile on Main Street. Those were the sorts of things that were being thrown around in the press. Song titles, they were talking about them. Obviously, Knocking on Heaven's Door, I'd had already, because I had the Japanese EP that had come out in 88 that had the live versions of that and a whole lot of Rosie and Shadow of Your Love, I think, was on there as well. So I had no shortage of songs in between. Knocking on Heaven's Door had been on some charity album as well, I think.
Yeah.
And Days of Thunder soundtrack too.
Yeah. So there had been bits and pieces coming out in between that was enough to hype up. Civil War, I think they did a Farm Aid, didn't they? Or
They did.
Yeah. And that was also on a thing too, like some
There was
kind
a
of
bootleg
benefit.
of that. Too,
Yeah, wasn't that like the last thing that Steven
Some
did with the
Armenian
band?
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was the last thing he drummed on.
Yeah, it was the
So-
last thing he ever played. It was the last
so
time he ever played with them was that Farm Aid show.
Yeah, there had been a lot of kind of that stuff. And then in the summer of 91, you'd be reading reviews of them. They dropped 8 songs into the set that summer. So holy shit. But 91, I'd been kicked out of Penn State. So I was living in Scranton, trying to scrounge rent.
This is a story for another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working, what was I, working at Wendy's, up in through. Yeah, I was actually.
Nice.
So I was in between universities, so I, bought them on cassette. I think I dubbed it and then sold them on, and it was a lot of material to kind of dig into, but they had really done the right thing with, the Terminator tie-in. It was all supposed to be out. Great song, great video. To this day, that's one of my favorite rock songs. Just because the imagery automatically comes back, and then they fucked it up and missed the tie-in, and you had to wait until September for the albums to come out. So, it really did turn out to be not so much a kitchen sink, because there wasn't that much in here that I felt was filler. There are some songs that I'm like, not quite as bad to call them filler, but there's certainly plenty of stuff that's not as strong as the strongest material on the album. So again, it took years. I've enjoyed the past week of listening the shit out of these albums again, and also listening to your playlist. I mean, each one of us has selected 14 songs that are our favorites from these 2 albums, from which to compile our 12-song, this panel's best of Your Illusion, which is not going to be as bad as this piece of shit, which is the all clean, all
clean version.
all nice. That was done for Walmarts and Targets and other mass market sellers who want to control what you're able to listen to. They forget what country they're based in.
Sorry, I was just going to say one thing really quickly that was brought up. How you guys are all saying that it might have been a good idea to have it on one album, or was it a good idea to throw on so many songs? I think one thing that's kind of forgotten in this, well, maybe not. I don't think Lonnie's forgotten, because he's the master of Guns N' Roses, so he'll know all this stuff. But is that they were very volatile at this point. Steven was on the way out. There was always constantly arguments between Slash and Axl and this and that. I think that the best thing that they did was record everything and put it out, because God knows that there would have been another record, and look how long it took till there was another actual studio record. Sure, we got Spaghetti Incident, but that's just covers, and I mean, an actual studio record took eons to come out. So the best thing that they could have did was to put this all out, because we might not have never gotten some of these songs.
I couldn't agree with Mark more about that. That it was ballsy to put both those albums out at the same time. I mean, to release 2 albums at the same time, no band does that. I guess Kiss does it with solo albums in '78, but who else does that? I mean, really?
Yeah.
I mean, no one else does that. I mean, that's how big they were in their minds, and that's how big they were in the record company's minds. That the record company said, "Yeah, let's do it." to give them the green light to do it. Even though there's stories that the record company said, well, why don't we just make a double album? Why make 2 separate albums? But for the record company to go along with it and say, yeah, do it. Let's make 2 separate albums. That's really ballsy to release that kind of stuff. But it's a testament to how big they were at the time. They were absolutely the biggest band on the planet at the time. And I'm with Mark, though, that it's a good thing they did it the way they did it, because what happened when the tour was over? Well, they broke up. And look how long it took before we got Chinese. And then it's been since April of 2016 that we've, quote unquote, been back together, at least with the three main guys. And they've done a lot of touring, and things have gone really well as far as shows going off without a hitch. But one thing we haven't gotten is new music. So that being said, it is a good thing that they released everything they had in their vaults all at once.
And that was always going to be one of the questions, because Appetite for Destruction was built on a lot of hype. You have to remember, when Appetite came out, their success wasn't guaranteed. It did not go platinum fast. That first 6 months, it scraped to gold. It was held off on the charts. Hysteria, again. It was August '88 that Appetite went to #1 finally. And then Sweet Child of Mine was just like a nail in the coffin and just over the top. There they go, 1 million a month after that. So, they really had something to follow. And while they'd given us a stopgap in Lies, obviously the reissue of the EP and the acoustic songs, which, I was living in Singapore when that one came out, and we just played the shit out of that one all that summer that it was out, or whenever it was, because it was always summer in Singapore. Always fucking hot. So, they had a lot to follow up, and then they had the balls to do 2 75-minute albums, ship 4 million copies of these fucking things, 2 million of each volume, and then they sell 500,000 in the first 2 hours. And by 6 a.m. of the day of release, both albums are platinum. That's just fucking incredible, even for the 80s, when, a lot of bands sold good albums. We're not talking massive multi-platinum. Look at Motley Crue sales for that period. At the time, they were doing 2-3 million. And this just, blew completely through that. And then at the end, as you said, there was no Guns N' Roses in Essential. Izzy leaves, Live and Let Die. But let's get into our rankings. The way we've done this is, like I said, each one of us selected 14 songs, and then from that we put it into the humongous algorithm machine and chose our Delusion. And Ken, you got your list in front of you of the 14 songs that you selected? And if not,
I do. The 14 that I selected, yes.
Yeah, so let us know which ones you picked, and then I'll get the master order, and we can start talking about some of these songs on this album.
Oh, okay, I picked, and I kind of had an order to it. I don't know, I haven't tried the order or anything, but my first pick was You Could Be Mine, no brainer. And then number 2, Don't Cry, which is the original one. I guess you could say the one on volume 1 of Delusion. And then I had at number 3, I had Bad Obsession, which I thought was kind of like a Stonesy type song. 4, Estranged. 5, I had Yesterdays. 6, I had Civil War. 7, I had The Garden. 8, 14 Years. 9, Locomotive. 10, Breakdown. And 11, Pretty Tied Up. And 12, ending at November Rain.
Alrighty, Mark, what were your picks?
Well, I did mine kind of almost like in a album release order. So I put first I put Double Talk and Jive. I always loved that song, that whole drum beat at the beginning. It was always great. I love that song. Bad Obsession is one of my all-time favorite songs off one. It's what a fantastic playing with Slash with that Travis Bean slide guitar. It's amazing shit, man. Pretty Tied Up. I mean, that to me is one of the hidden gems on too. That whole sitar at the beginning and everything. That's what a great song. The lyrics are something you don't want to let your mother read if she gets a hold of your record. Then you got a Breakdown, which is fantastic. I always thought it was very ballsy of those guys to put a banjo at the beginning of a song like that. It was so like down south United States, like Mississippi kind of sounding. It was really cool. I thought it was a great idea. November Rain is a classic. Number 6, I put So Fine. I always thought that was a kind of overlooked song. I mean, it's so, to me, that song shows Duff to me. Like that to me is like such a Duff vibe song. I really liked it. I thought it was a song that was, could have got a little bit more traction. But You Could Be Mine. I mean, we already said so much about that song. Amazing song. Garden of Eden. I thought that was a very cool, upbeat, in-your-face song. I always loved that video, that single camera shot of just the band and them just, rocking out. I thought it was a very cool idea, considering that this is a band that was making like $5 million videos. To come back with a, $50 video after, it was a fantastic idea. Perfect Crime, a very underappreciated song, I think. It's just one of those more straight ahead, balls to the wall rockers. And then the last 3, I think, are just absolute classics. Locomotive, I think, is one of the best examples of Slash, Duff, and Matt Sorum being locked in on an awesome groove. Estranged is Axl Rose's masterpiece on Volume 2 for sure. Great lyrics, great piano playing on that. And I ended up with Don't Cry, my record, because I put 12 on there. What can you say about Don't Cry? Probably one of the biggest ballads of the last, 10, 15 years for sure, that song. And then the extra 2 that I picked were 14 Years, I believe was one of them. Was it? No, it wasn't 14 Years. I picked Coma, which is a interesting song. I never thought I'd see Guns do a 10-minute song. I mean, this is not a Yes album, right? So I thought it was interesting to hear that. And for anybody who had a decent stereo system, that heartbeat at the beginning really kicked the hell out of your speakers.
Yeah. We'll talk about that more when we do all the songs. But hell, that to this day creeps the shit out of me.
I know. And then the last one that I picked was Yesterday's. That to me was kind of a song that I thought, I wouldn't say there was a filler, but if there was anything that was close to a filler to me, I think that would have been probably one of them, in my opinion.
All right, Lonnie, just read out your list, and then we're going to go one by one through our combined best of Delusion.
So the 12 I submitted were, and I kind of did it the way you guys had done it too, like in an album type form, were Right Next Door to Hell, Pretty Tied Up, Don't Cry, Breakdown, Bad Obsession, Locomotive, Civil War, Double Talkin' Jive, 9th November Rain, 10 Estranged, 11 You Could Be Mine, and 12 ending it with Coma.
All right, which just leaves me. All right, and I went with You Could Be Mine, Dust and Bones, Bad Obsession, November Rain, Coma, Pretty Tied Up, Locomotive, 14 Years. That should really have been on Chinese Democracy, but, maybe they could have 28 years on a new album if they ever do one.
Right.
Dead Horse, which I don't think anyone else has mentioned. Yesterday's, Estranged, and Civil War. I mean, what I really found interesting about all of our picks was, we had some unanimous selections. Bad Obsession, November Rain, Pretty Tied Up, Locomotive, Estranged, and You Could Be Mine. All four of us picked all those from the list. 3 of the 4 of us picked Don't Cry. I did not. I hate that fucking song. Both versions. Civil War and Breakdown. 2 of us, at least, picked Double Talkin' Jive, Coma, 14 Years, and Yesterday's. And, one of us, the standalones, Lonnie, I mean, Right Next Door to Hell is surprising. You're the only one who picked that. Because
I am surprised I'm the only one who picked that.
It's a really fun song considering all the shit that went around it with his psychotic neighbor who accused him of hitting her with a wine bottle, throwing her keys out the building. And Axe was like, if I hit her, she wouldn't still be here. I'd be up there for murder, And then, of course, when the prosecutor wouldn't prosecute him for it, she sued them. Yeah. And to this day, you go on her LinkedIn page, what she say? I have a Guns N' Roses song written about me. I'm really proud of that. Yes.
Yeah, good for you.
We know. What are the other standalones? Ken, The Garden. I had 2. I was the only one who picked Dustin Bones.
I love The
Dead
Garden.
Horse. The Garden, I mean, that's like a
Isn't
really old
Alice on
song
that?
as well.
Isn't Alice
Yeah.
on that song?
Alice
Yeah.
I mean,
Cooper.
that's a
Alice
fantastic
Cooper.
song. I don't know how the heck it didn't make this list. I think some people are very wrong here.
We obviously have no taste and no respect for the Coop. But I was reading one of the newspaper articles about that, and they're like, "Oh, we just thought we'd ask Alice if he'd do it," and he said, "Yeah, we couldn't believe that he, you know." So that's
Yeah.
cool shit. So yeah, what mine? Dust and Bones, Dead Horse again, just really rocking, Roxy kind of very Stonesy, Aerosmithy songs. Mark, you had 3. You were the outlier. You had Perfect Crime, Guard of Eden, So Fine. I mean, So Fine is one of my near misses. That could easily
Agreed.
be a pick. It's kind of 2 different songs wrapped into one, and I like the second half far more than the first half. Great pick. All 3. You know, again, there's a lot of good shit on these albums, and very few that really kind of fall into the category of utter filler.
Yeah.
All right,
Definitely.
so that leaves the rejects, and I guess this is the stuff that we think sucks or just doesn't measure up, and that is "Live and Let Die," Paul McCartney and Wings cover, which
It's a cover.
I know they used
That's
to do
the
that in
reason.
Soundcheck. They do it in Soundcheck, and that's why they put it on the album. They used to have
Yeah.
fun with it. You know, maybe it was a song that they said, you know, that we're going to keep recording until we're done recording however many songs it is, then we'll put out an album. They just never stopped recording, and maybe when they started doing stuff like that, they should have stopped. You Ain't the First. Not surprised. Back Off, Bitch. Don't Damn Me is kind of
I like
surprising.
it.
That
Yeah,
no one
that's a
picked
good
that
song.
one. Bad Apples. Knocking on Heaven's Door. Not surprised again, as that doesn't really feel like it belongs in this album. Get in the Ring, motherfucker. Paul Griswold. That gets more pussy than you do. Shotgun Blues and My World. So those were the ones that we really didn't like. So let's go one by one for these ones that we do like, starting with Bad Obsession. Which any 4 of us can start.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Mark,
Well,
go.
Bad Obsession, honestly, Bad Obsession to me is one of the songs that I think makes Volume 1 strong. I mean, that song to me is really well done and shows that these guys know how to pick their guest musicians. You know, Teddy Zigzag on the harmonica, the big Greek there, he's so good on harmonica, like unbelievable. And you know, he's alive, especially. He's really fantastic. I mean, I always thought that Slash really showed that he has more to him as a guitar player than just just like a regular rhythm lead player. I mean, the slide playing is not as easy as people think it is to play, you know, and to play it well like that, that takes a bit of skill there. I mean, and again, the tip of the hat to the Rolling Stones is very obvious because not only did they do it in open G tuning like Mr. Keith Richards, but he strung it 5-string, just like Keith. No low E string. E string whipped off, just a 5-string. And it just sounds amazing. I mean, one of my favorite versions of that song has got to be that Paris concert that they broadcast on television that they did. What a great version of Bad Obsession. And it had a little bit of a personal connection with me as well, because when I was really into it, I was kind of deep in my own bad obsessions with my drugs and stuff like that. So I kind of related to it very personally. So I'll always have a good connection. Well, a connection to it because of that.
A connection, yes. Good or bad, it's part of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
All these things. But didn't the Stones have a piano player? Wasn't it Nicky Hopkins who played for the Stones? Because that was one of the things that always kind of stood out for a lot of these songs, that you've got the underlying, you've got harmonica, you've got horns, you got
Dizzy
piano.
on piano.
Yeah, so all those elements are just make the kind of Stones parallels a little bit more obvious, but yet they've got their own sound. And as you said, this song actually predated Brownstone, which being about their gutter life, I always loved it because, again, at 91, Scranton, we weren't up to any good. When you're flipping burgers for a living, you're just by I can't even remember, Keystone or something, or some
Yeah.
Keystone, yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
college
that's
beer.
Genesee Cream Ale and all that shit afterwards. So yeah, that was Scranton. Ken, Bad Obsession.
Yeah, well, like Mark said, I mean, I had written down here, as the Stones, the Stones feel on it. I mean, of course, there's other songs like that, but this one really, really had one. And it's just a great song. And I had it early in my list, so I obviously think it's one of the better albums because I usually would put some of the even better songs at the beginning. But it's a great song, and the other thing I'd say is, with Slash, is I think what makes Guns N' Roses such a great band is it's Slash for the most part. It's his guitar playing, his tasty little solos and fills that he puts in things. I mean, that is the key thing about him that makes the band so good. I mean, it to me, it's Slash is the whatever you want to call it, the hero of the band or whatever, most valuable player.
Julian.
And you don't agree.
And
Julian
I don't
disagree.
agree. Who wrote the song? Izzy.
Izzy Stradlin.
Who's the most important guy in the band? Izzy. His pop sensibilities and his riffs, to which Slash could then play stunning lead guitar over. I've always thought of Izzy, and you listen to any of his numerous solo albums, but enough about Izzy. We'll do an episode on that. Lonnie.
The song is fantastic. It has this great groove to it. That Teddy Zigzag provides with the harmonica, and Slash on this Travis Beam, and then Axl's just dirty drug related lyrics. I mean, it's your typical. I mean, it's a typical Guns N' Roses song, with a better groove to it than some of the others. They had talked about the original version of Night Train was going to have a harmonica on it, was going to have a harmonica solo on it. So I'm glad they revisited that idea when they did the Illusion album and put it on Bad Obsession, because without the harmonica, I think the song would really lose something. It creates a feeling to it that would make the song really feel kind of lacking without. I really wish they would play around with it some more and bring it back on these shows this summer and kind of switch up the set list a little bit, since they're not calling it Not in This Lifetime anymore. Maybe we'll get a different set list and throw some gems like this in there. So I think it'd be fun, and the song couldn't get. I mean, sorry, I don't understand. It's fantastic. I love the dirty lyrics, and like the 11-year-old in me at the time didn't understand a lot of what was going on in the song. It really took me until I was about 15 or 16. Go, oh. He called the doctor.
All makes sense.
He called my mother. She's just a what now? Okay, I know what you're talking.
You don't want to ask that question at the dinner table. All right. Next up, Don't Cry. And I never asked you guys which ones you were voting for. Again, it was I kind of assumed it was the original version, not the other one. And that was a really old song. It was on the first Guns N' Roses demo. Now that that's come out on Appetite's Deluxe Super Glorious Edition, it's been around a long time as a song. Did I say I didn't like it? I hate it.
Yes,
I really
you said
do
that.
not like that song. And when I had to watch the video for it, that was just like visually. Okay. But you guys do. The three of you like it. Mark, what's great about Don't Cry, and which version were you voting on, in case?
Well, the original to me has always been the one to go to. I mean, I always found that when I listened to the alt version of it, I found the change of lyrics kind of jolting at first, because it didn't have the same flow I found when in the verses. I mean, that's essentially what he changed, was the verse parts, right? The choruses pretty much stayed the same. I think what I've always liked about it is the sort of the the flow of Axl singing. He goes from this really somber, low voice to this really, very Axl Rose, Nazareth toned high pitched voice that he's so popular for. Shannon Hoon was the one who also did the harmonized vocals with him on this song as well. And, some people say that was the magic of it. I can't either agree or disagree on that. I was never a big Shannon Hoon fan, to be honest with you. But I think that, Izzy, his playing on it is, I find, very eerie. If you listen to this song on headphones, he has a really kind of distorted, very reverb tone to his guitar, and it's very twangy. It's almost like his frets are too high in his guitar, and he gets this fret buzz when he plays these chords. When he hits that C, he gets this buzz on his guitar. It's like, and I always thought to myself, they kept that, but then you think back to the stories about Izzy. He's like, listen, I'm playing this song once through with the guys, and that's it. So what you got is what you got, right? But there's always something kind of magical about Izzy's rhythm guitar playing in the songs. I think that was one of it. And it definitely has one of Slash's better guitar solos. And I love that feedback squeal at the end of the solo before they go into that, please remember that I never lied. That whole part there. I always thought that was a great little feedback squawk at the end that he did there when he throws the Les Paul off the cliff in the video there. I've always thought that was a very cool bit of guitar playing on there. I always thought that the ending was really strong. I mean, a lot of people kind of rolled their eyes when he did that whole extended vocal part at the end there, but I thought it just showed that he had some talent as a singer for sure.
It was strangling a cat, but if you enjoyed it, that's fine. Lonnie, don't cry.
Yeah, the ending of the song is the worst part about the song, but they followed the formula. You had the hard rocking song to start off with. You Could Be Mine. So what was the formula at the time? Well, you put out a ballad. You put out your ballad next, and that's what they did. And I think a lot of us were expecting. I was expecting it to be a ballad for the next single, and of course it was. And I liked the song. I liked it before it was released as a single. I thought it was very, very cool and very, very catchy. I do lean toward the one on Use Your Illusion 1 as well, which I think will probably be the consensus, just because the verses just make more sense, and the second one just seems a little bit forced to me. So,
agreed.
But I agree with Mark though, where Slash's solo on there is there's so many different elements to it that make it so great. But I'm with you though. I love the end to it, like when he throws the guitar off the cliff, and it fit. That sound and him throwing the guitar off the cliff just fit perfectly together. So I like how the song builds though, how the verses are, how the first verse is very soft, and then you get the refrain. The second verse is there's a little more tempo to it. There's a little, it's a little harder. And by the time you get to the third verse, it really has really picked up and is really more of a rock song by that point, and until it hits this crescendo at the end. It's just the whole song is just one big crescendo, and I think that was a really, really cool aspect to it that makes it different than a lot of other power ballads at the time, either whether it be prior or since. So to me, I think it's a great ballad, and it's one of the better songs on there. Sorry, Julian.
That's okay. I'm perfectly fine being wrong in your mind. Ken.
Yeah, it's a great song, a catchy tune, and yeah, I like how, like Lonnie said, it's kind of starts, really slower, or not necessarily slower, but softer, yeah, easier at the beginning, and yeah, it builds, it keeps building throughout the song, and to, like Lonnie said, it becomes pretty much a rocker. So it's just another great catchy song that I heard about a million times. I don't remember the video with the guitar throwing off the cliff or whatever, but I'm sure if I haven't seen it so long.
You remember that Izzy
It's
wasn't
been,
in the video.
it's been so long. I probably remember that, yeah. But it's been so long since I even seen that. I would venture to say it's been, 20, at least 20 years, since I've seen it.
Yeah, I can understand "Don't Cry" making someone want to throw a guitar off a cliff, but that's just,
Wow.
that's just me apparently on this panel. Ken, the next pickup is Double Talking Jive. You and I didn't pick that. You got anything to add about that one before we go to the two who did?
Yeah, Double Talking Jive. I mean, it was okay to me. That one felt like filler to me. I just didn't. I just didn't care for it, and it just fell off my list. So, not much to say about that one.
Yeah, same with me. My notes on that are just meh. It's for me the best part of the song is the guitars. And I love the ending solo and the flamenco guitar at the end. Those are the best parts of it. So, like the guitar work, the rest of it, and the funny part of these first three songs is Izzy.
Yeah.
This as well.
It's all Izzy.
Yeah, Mark, you and Lonnie both picked this, and it made our final list because of a tie break. What are your thoughts on it?
I've always loved it. I always thought that it showed it showed strong points of the band members. Matt Sorum drumming, because I'll tell you one thing really quickly. There's been great debate, and I'm anxious to hear Lonnie's take on this as well. There's great debate amongst Guns N' Roses fans about what happened to the sound of Guns N' Roses after Steven Adler left. A lot of people said that the feel of Guns N' Roses went completely out the window, and that Matt Sorum was nothing more than just a hack metal drummer that just kind of, wasn't the same feel that Adler had. My drummer in my band never bought the Delusion albums because he said that it didn't sound the same Guns N' Roses without Adler. He only bought Appetite and stayed with Appetite and refused to buy it. He thought Matt Sorum sucked, and he hated how Guns N' Roses sounded because of that. So to me, I always argued with him because I thought that this is a song where Matt Sorum kind of showed the power that he had in it. Things that Matt can do. This is it. I think that he's a great drummer on this, and I also love the fact that you have Izzy singing on this. I think that his singing and this is kind of interesting. At first, I never knew that was Izzy Stradlin singing the lead vocal part in this song. Because I saw, in Paris when they were doing it, it was all Axl. Obviously, Izzy was gone by this point, but still, I always thought it was interesting whenever they would let Izzy sing on the songs. I thought he had a great voice. I loved Izzy Stradlin and the Juju Hounds. I thought it was a great album. So I've always loved this album. And again, I have to agree with you, though. The Spanish guitar flamenco stuff at the end is amazing. The whole guitar solo at the end is fantastic. I mean, who would have thought you'd hear Slash playing in melodic minor key? That's held for like Yngwie Malmsteen and those people. So, it's really well done on their part.
Yeah, that again, even though I didn't pick it, that just the guitar is impossible not to mention how good that is on this song. Lonnie, Double Talking Jive.
I think it's a fantastic song, and yes, the guitar at the end is the best part of it, but there's so many great elements. There's so many great elements to that song, and like there's Izzy singing, there's Axl in the background, there's Matt Sorum's drumming, and there's the Slash guitar solo at the end. I mean, it really highlights, I think, the band itself and how strong they were. And I didn't even mention Duff McKagan. So, I to echo what Mark said, I'm sorry. I think I know Steven brought a great feel to the band, but I think Matt's drumming on these albums is phenomenal. And two different drummers in their own right. But I think Matt's a great drummer. And he's showcased on this song, like that. I think I remember listening to the song, early on thinking, wow, you really hear his power. And not to take anything away from Steven, but I mean, you can really hear how powerful a drummer he was. So, I put it on there just because it really showcased. You really can hear distinctly each member of the band, and it really just kind of highlights how great of a unit they were.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with Matt Sorum, by the way. I do, obviously like Sonic Temple with the Cult that he played on,
Mm-hmm.
I believe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I always like kind of the feel. It's a little bit like a Peter Criss conversation that you replace a drummer who's got something unquantifiable, inquantifiable,
Hmm.
with someone who has better technical chops, perhaps, and has more power. And you lose something in the equation that in rock and roll is kind of the X
Hmm.
factor, that you have someone a little bit out of sync and it just adds a feel to a song that you lose with precision. And,
Hmm.
that's the only thing I'm coming from. Next up on our list is November Rain. Unanimous pick again. What the hell else can I say about it? That it's just massively grand. It's exquisite. It's just unbelievable. It's like a free bird for the 90s. It just kind of builds and builds and builds. And yet it fucking dated from 86 and got bumped off the Appetite because of Sweet
Yeah.
Child. I mean, just go figure that out. And I mean, you only really heard the good quality copies of it once the deluxe edition came out of Appetite. And you're like, wow, it's pretty much fully formed there. All they did was just record it on, holy shit, Axl was writing that good back then. Ken, November Rain.
Yeah, November Rain. I've always liked it. It's a epic song. And I think maybe they did leave it off of Appetite because it doesn't really fit. I think with those other songs on that are on Appetite, I think it would have thrown it off. So yeah, it's good they left it and kept it for this, and it's kind of an epic song, like something like even talking about Elton John, Funeral for a Friend, something like that. It's just a real epic type cool song. I've always loved it. That's why I put it as my closing track on my list, because I thought that was a great way to go out on the album. So it's a great song.
Yep. Mark, your thoughts on November Rain?
Oh, I loved it. I think Axl's piano playing on it is top shelf, just great stuff. Um, I've also I also agree with Ken. I think that if they would have kept November Rain on Appetite, it would have been a very noticeable left turn. I mean, Appetite is so whiskey soaked and so
Hmm.
really balls to the wall, and it's borderline metal in times as well. And this is so you know just so grandiose. It's like Beatles at their most grandiose. So if you can imagine that, like when they brought out the orchestras and the strings and all that stuff, it's that. You know what I mean? It's every bit as good as something like that. And I just think that it fit better on this album, and I think that it also got more traction because it was on this album. Because it came out on such a hyped record. They were able to release 9 singles off of it with no problems because it was so hyped up. I don't know if they would have been able to do that, give it a fair shake with Appetite, because like you said, it took a while for that album to get traction, right? You'd hate to have lost a song like that in the midst of that. So I think it's great. Again, another great guitar solo. And the ending part is interesting, that double time piano part that comes in. I always thought that was an interesting songwriting twist that was put into it. You're muted, Julian.
Hello?
Yeah, great. Sorry. I was busy muting Lonnie and muting myself. Lonnie, your thoughts on November Rain?
It's epic. It's an epic song, and there's so many layers to it. And when I heard that stripped down piano version of it and that acoustic version of it, maybe for the first time, I don't know, 10, maybe 15 years ago, and just fell in love with the song all over again, and couldn't stop listening to those demos of it from '86, and that long piano only version became my favorite version of it for the longest time. But I'm back to the point now too, where I appreciate the version that's on the album because it is so grand. It's so grand and so there's so much going on in that song with the string synthesizers and the different instruments, layers upon layers on it. So, and we talk about that, and talk about Matt Storm's drumming on there. There's a great video that actually explained to him how he wanted to do the drum fills and how he wanted each drum fill to sound exactly the same. And how Axl really kind of just wrote those drum parts for him. And that's a big part. Those drum fills are a big part of the song. And when you don't hear them on that stripped down version of it on the piano only, it really kind of makes a big difference. But that stripped down piano version really highlights how beautiful the song is. And the lyrics, you guys haven't even mentioned the lyrics on that song and how poetic it is. And of course he wrote the song about Aaron Everly, and it's about being in love with someone who isn't in love with you. And that is one of the most torturous places to be in life. And it's fantastic. And we haven't even mentioned the video. And the video just blew it off the wall in the summer of '92. And everybody's like, what happened? How did she die? Nobody knew how she died. And that's what drove the song in popularity even more. And that's something that we're missing in rock and roll today. But that's another Look It's Rock and Roll podcast there. That's a great topic. But the video itself was just so over the top. And it was the first time that we got to see Gilby Clarke too in the video. Like, oh, there he is. We hadn't really seen him other than maybe a few glimpses here and there. But it's one of my favorite songs. Maybe it's definitely in my top 5 favorite songs, maybe ever. My wife and I, if we had narrowed it down to 3 songs we were going to dance to at our wedding, and this was one of them. This song is so important to me.
Nice. I was going to ask you what the missus thought about this band, whether this was a band.
She's going to Indianapolis with me.
Yep. So you don't torture her with multiple bands. That's a good thing, Lonnie. Very wise. Good idea.
Correct.
Good idea.
I know my boundaries.
Yep. All right, let's move on. Coma, and I think you and I were the only ones to pick this. And it again got in off the tiebreaker. I always loved the perspective, of a drug overdose and singing about it in an epic.
It's so Guns N' Roses.
It totally. When you think that all these guys have probably had one, what better group of people to write a song about it than a bunch like them? Because again, in 1991. It was an interesting time in my life, and this just really resonated. So, from some of the shit I've seen going down with other people. And, again, Mark, I think it was, you mentioned the heartbeat, on a good stereo. There was one night that we were doing stuff, and that came on, and it was loud, and it started in my chest, thudding. Oh my God, that was it was like a Pink Floyd album for the 90s. That just one little element that really magnified itself. Lonnie, I'll go back to you on that since you picked it as well.
Yeah, I was really, really excited when the set list came out for the Not in This Lifetime tour that it was included. I was like, fucking really? They're playing Coma? And I really couldn't believe it or wrap my head around it. And there's not many Axl quotes out there in the last 4 years because he hasn't done maybe but a couple interviews since they got back together. And he mentions that one of the reasons why he did it is that he knew it would make Slash really happy to put Coma in the set list. And I remember reading that and thinking, when's the last time we did anything that would make that for the purpose of making Slash really happy? So, but the song itself is 10 minutes of just. It's the changes in it, and the way it starts with the heartbeat and the changes and Duff's bass that comes in right afterwards. You just get this dark, creepy feeling, and it just builds and builds and builds like a good Guns N' Roses song should, I guess you could say. And it just ends with this 2-minute just Axl Rose screaming lyric rant. and it's just epic. And it's one of the many epic songs on these albums. And I couldn't do a list of my favorite Guns N' Roses songs off I Use Your Illusions without including this, because it's fantastic.
Mark, you've kind of alluded to some of your points on it, but give us a quick recap.
Well, again, that heartbeat. I mean, I remember one time, I'll come clean, gentlemen. One time at a rehearsal that I was at with my band, we had fallen into some Jamaican gum weed. I don't know if you're familiar with this stuff, but it's really tacky weed, and it almost makes you completely like stupidly paralyzed at some point when you take it. And I remember we put on Guns N' Roses album at that point, and we were just kind of sitting on the sofa, just totally chilled out, and then all of a sudden this do do starts, and me and my singer looked at each other, we're like really, we couldn't even talk. We're kind of like like kind of pointing at the stereo, like, what the hell is going on? Like it was a moment I'll never forget, and he'll never forget too. Every time we see each other, we haven't seen each other for maybe 10 years now, but I'm guarantee you if I bring up that story, he'll burst into laughter as well with that memory of that whole situation. I mean, it's such a great song. And again, the most thing that shocked me about it was the fact that it was such a long song. I never would have thought Guns N' Roses would have wrote a song like that, and that they had the musical knowledge at that time to make a 10-minute song that wouldn't have been boring. And it's far from boring. I think it's a great song, greatly written, and that moment will forever be a scarred memory back here for the rest of my life. But I wouldn't have had it any other way. I love that song.
Ken?
Okay, that one didn't make my list because it grates on me. I don't know what
Really?
it is. I just don't like it that much. I mean, it's okay, but I'd rather skip it. It's just the way I feel about that song.
Lucky it's at the
maybe
end.
I'm not a huge, a big enough Guns N' Roses fan about it all, but it's something about it, and maybe it's the way Axel's singing on it. I think probably is what bothers me about it. The way he did it. So there it is.
Well, then lead us into the next song, which is Civil War, which you did pick, and that's yet another long song. I mean, they had 5 pretty long songs between these two albums. So, what were your thoughts on that?
I like that one. I mean, that builds too, like some of the other songs that they do. But I always like the beginning. The little lead in to the song, because those lines come from the movie Cool Hand Luke, which was always one of my favorite movies, of all time, with Paul Newman. Just a great movie. But I was like, I heard that, like, what the heck? It's like, I know that. And then it goes into the song. I was like, oh wow, that's cool. And Civil War, I don't know if it has to do with anything the same with Cool Hand Luke, but it's a cool song about an interesting subject, actually. Historic, I guess, subject. So it's just a great song. I always loved it. Nothing bad to say about that one.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo that sentiment. Anytime that I either see Shane or Cool Hand Luke on TV, I watch the damn things. I always have. When that intro happened, I'm like, yeah, Cool Hand Luke. But then they do sing it about Civil War, which any war is basically the ultimate failure to communicate. So it ties in perfectly.
Right.
Always loved the song, always will. It's just one of those great pieces of music and great audio storytelling. Lonnie, you picked it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I picked it as well. It's again, starts off and finishes strong, and it's the last appearance. It's the only appearance by Steven on either of the two albums, and the lyrics on it are absolutely incredible. That he's, again, you guys referenced November Rain, that he was writing this kind of stuff that early on. This was one of the first songs recorded for Appetite, and he was writing a lot of these things like that early on too. Like, you're power hungry, selling soldiers in a human grocery store. That's wild. It's incredible, really, is what it is. You know, for all I've seen has changed my mind. But still, the wars go on and the years go by with no love of God or human rights, because all those dreams are swept aside. But bloody hands of the hypnotized who carry the cross of homicide, and history bears the scars of our civil wars. That's genius. It really is. And I'm going to quote some more stuff when we get in the Locomotive and Breakdown, which are two of my favorite songs on the albums, which I've written research papers, not research papers, but I've written papers for school in college and in high school on both of those songs and got A's on them. Like, I just broke those songs down, and I love those two. I'll get into those in a minute. But Civil War's lyrics are incredible, and it really when that came out, before the Illusions came out, it really kind of took my expectations, and I think a lot of the world's expectations for these albums to new levels. Thinking, what are we really going to get on these? And what to what places will these albums take us? And this was the lead in to where these albums would take us. And it's an incredible song that I think is really underappreciated and deserved more attention than what it got when the albums were released.
Yep. Axl Rose, poet. Mark, this didn't make your list.
No, I mean, it only didn't make my list because I think out of all the songs I had kind of maybe I don't know if this is a bad word to use, but overdosed on this song as far as hearing it so many times before the record came out. But it's a great song. I always thought that they play the song live almost better than on record, I think, a lot of times. I've always loved Slash's kind of wah guitar solo bits that he, segues from into the song, and how they kind of come out of it with him doing a kind of extended Jimi Hendrix, voodoo child thing at the end, what they used to always do. I think it's great. Again, it shows great strength in the songwriting. I agree. Axl's lyric writing is very strong on this. This is one of the rare songs, well, I wouldn't say rare, but one of the songs from this record that hasn't dated. The topic matter is as relevant today as it was back in the time when it was written. So you can play the song on the radio now and people won't roll their eyes and say, yeah, this is 1983 or whatever, like how you can with some of these songs in history, right? But again, great stuff. The memory of Slash walking out with the double neck guitar and playing the guitar bits is very strong in my mind. It was one of the reasons why I was desperately wanting a double neck when I was younger. Great stuff. I think Lonnie kind of, covered it as much as it needs to be covered.
All right, well, let's move on. Next song up is another unanimous pick, and it's Pretty Tied Up, which to me, again, it's just really a good rocker, just straight in my ballpark of stuff I like. There's only one thing I can't stand about this song, and it's Axl on both these albums like to do a low voice vocal overdub on a lot of them spoken parts, and one of the dumbest ones he does is on this, and it's Cool Ranch Dressing. And I just shake my head. I'm sure there's a story behind why it's on there, but it just ruins otherwise a perfect rock and roll song. Lonnie, Pretty Tied Up.
I love it. I think it's
check it out.
Why Cool Ranch Dressing. But the Mark mentioned when he did his kind of summary of the songs, I love the sitar intro. It's kind of creepy and just kind of hooks you into the song right away. It's kind of Guns N' Roses' version of Sweet Pain, I guess you could say, in a way. And it's one of the more Appetite feeling songs on the albums. And it feels like it could belong anywhere on Appetite, really. And I think that's one reason why I like it so much, is that it sounds a whole lot like that record. It's his lyrics are great. He sounds like Appetite Axel even on it to me. I think I don't know if it's really intentional or not, but it really captures that Appetite feel almost as much as You Could Be Mine does. But it's one of the more rocking songs start to finish on Use Your Illusion too. We've mentioned how a lot of their songs, kind of start off slow and build. This one starts off, punches you in the face, and keeps punching you in the face the whole time. Mm-hmm. I love it. It's a great song.
Guess who wrote it? Mark.
Yes. The Pearls of Rock.
Some guy, his name just escapes me right now.
Yeah, I understand the kind of dislike of that supersonic low voice that he can do sometimes on these recordings, but I always thought that the little extra voice parts were kind of cool. And so I've always loved that introduction on that, the Pearls of Rock and Roll Decades. I always thought that was a great intro bit at the beginning there. And yeah, I've always loved this song. That the sitar at the beginning, that growling, distorted guitar underneath it at the beginning when it starts up, and that that 16-note hi-hat thing that Matt does underneath it. It's just such a great beginning to a song. I always thought that it was a song that they could have put more spotlight on. In my opinion, it deserved much more focus. Obviously, the reason why it didn't have as much because of the topic matter. Friday night is going up inside her again. I mean, that right there is something that you probably don't want to analyze too deeply.
I don't think you have to.
yeah. And the whole Pearls of Rock and Roll Decadence, I mean, that's another thing that we don't want to go into too much detail with either. But yeah, so it's a great song. And that's one of the things, I think that's one of the strengths of Axl's lyric writing, is that he wrote songs that were cool to young kids and to the people that were in my age group, like in the 19, 20-year-old who were jiving and connecting to what these lyrics were talking about. We thought it was kind of cool too at the time, but the younger kids, they were kind of unawares at the time of what he was talking about, but they still thought it was cool. And that's one of the hidden secrets of his lyrics, for sure, is that he hooked in everybody and they don't even know why they were being hooked in.
Yep. Ken.
Yeah, well, I agree that this is one of the more straight ahead, rock songs, like Lonnie was saying on the album. And yeah, I agree that it could have fit on Appetite for Destruction. That's one of the reasons I think I do like it, because it kind of reminds me of that type feel. And it was kind of getting back to that versus a lot of the other material on these 2 discs. But yeah, I just think it's a great rocker, straight ahead. It's good. I mean, that's why I put it on there and kicked off a couple other songs that I thought didn't deserve it.
Yeah, they were not worthy. Next up on our list is Locomotive, Complicity. Holy shit. If there's a song on either of these albums that's about the guitars, for me, this is kind of it. Those chugging guitars. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that it screams every time I listen to it is, listen to the fucking tone of the lead. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, that is so dialed in. Everything else, it's just like another epic of just guitars. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's like guitars. Holy yeah. So, Ken, let's just start back.
That should be the still for this episode.
No, another great song. I wrote down, great groove to it, which I love. And yeah, like you said, chugging. It is like, that a train. You can kind of feel it, that, mm-hmm. it's almost a gallop too, in a way. But just a great song, unique, and stands out to me as one of the better songs on all of these, from all the songs. on the album, unique in its style from all the other songs that they've done before. Actually, I don't know. I love it. I mean, that's one I will not skip.
Yep.
No.
Mark.
Yeah, this one really sits well with me. I've always thought that beginning of the song is fantastic. It was one of those things where I looked at my drummer who didn't like Matt and go, listen to that beat at the beginning. You like it, don't you? And he was kind of like, yeah, it's good, and it's fantastic. But I'll have to say one thing about this that we've been kind of overlooking. This song particularly put a very big spotlight on Duff McKagan, I think. His bass playing on this is great, and Duff McKagan was the guy who I tribute and credit bringing back chorusing on bass guitar again. Because for a long time, a lot of people thought it was out of style to put chorus on bass guitar, and he has that fantastic sound, that Gallien-Kruger bass amp sound. And he was the one who was pushing the Gallien-Kruger bass amps back then. And he has such a distinctive sound with that Fender Precision bass that he used. But that chorusing, that that little bass run that he does, it's so nicely chorused. And I mean, and now he was doing that as far back as Rocket Queen on the bass, that kind of stuff. And I've always loved his bass sound. I think it has balls to it. It has really good mid-range to it, but that chorusing makes it stick out amongst the guitars that were layered on top of it, So I think that he did a great job, and I think we should give Duff a tip of the hat a bit more with his contributions to this record for sure.
Nice. Lonnie.
It is. I know I said this about November Rain, but it's right up there with that. It's one of my favorite songs ever. It's like Ken said, I never skip it. It's a great song to run to. I've run. It's on my marathon. It's on my marathon playlist. I can tell you that right now. It's on my half marathon playlist. It's one that I can't do without when if I got to be fired up for 4 hours straight, this song's got to be a part of it. So, and it's epic. You guys talked about Matt's drumming. You talked about Duff's bass playing on this song, the melodic bass playing of Duff on this song, the guitars, obviously, how incredible slashes and the solos on this, what a driving force it is. But to me, the best thing about it are the lyrics, and there's a lot of them in this song.
Yeah.
And you can pick this thing apart and you can dissect it, but there's two parts to me that really stand out lyrically, and one of them is one that I quoted when we did our little show prep about the episode, and it's one that I've quoted in many papers in high school and college, and it says, "You can use your illusion, let it take you where it may. We live and learn, and then sometimes it's best to walk away. Me, I'm just here hanging out. It's my only place to stay, at least for now anyway. I've worked too hard for my illusions just to throw them all away." I've worked too hard for my illusions just to throw them all away. That is America. It is. People want to believe what they want to believe, and they don't want to be told otherwise. I don't want to hear it because I know in my mind what's right. I don't want to hear it. That's America in 1991.
Yes.
It's America now.
That's very American indeed.
Crazy. And the other part I love is what the song is really about, and which is what most of what actual songs are about, is about being in love and the pain of being in love. And that is, affection is a blessing. Can you find it in your scored heart? I tried to keep this thing together, but the tremor tore my pad apart. Yeah, I know it's hard to face when all we've worked for has gone to waste, but you're such a stupid woman and I'm such a stupid man, but love like time has its own plan. That's awesome. Again, with the poet. I couldn't write that if you put a gun to my head. And I don't think any of us could. It's fantastic. It really speaks to me. And I was playing this song actually the other night, and I was really excited when they started playing it last fall on tour. So I was playing a little YouTube video of it on the TV when they were playing it on tour last fall, and I'm singing along with it. And I get to the chorus, and my baby's got a locomotive. Get the bitch off my back, and my wife's like, that doesn't make any sense. What are you even singing? And I go, no, this song is fantastic. What are you talking about?
Honey, you just don't understand it.
You don't understand genius when you hear it, do you?
And it's that line in the song, the first one you quoted about using your illusion. That's where the title from this episode comes. Choose your delusion. Use your illusion, choose your delusion. Same damn thing from a different kind of angle. So let's move on to the next one, and that is Yesterday's. Again, we get into kind of the Stonesy sounding stuff, and it's just short, concise pop song, which I've always thoroughly enjoyed. Ken, you and I were the only ones who picked this one, so what are your thoughts on Yesterday's?
I think it's a great song. Was it not a single? I don't know.
It was, yeah.
Was it? Yeah. I thought it was. This is one of those songs that are, it's not a heavy rock or anything. It's just it's more pop to me, pop rock, but a great melodic type song with a hook that I like. I just think it's a great song, and I'm surprised that that other people may have not chosen this. I just don't know what the reason would be, but because it's so good, so I don't know what to say. It's just a great song.
We're clearly have superior taste.
Wow.
Clearly.
All right, let's move into the last three here. Estranged, I think that was probably unanimous pick. Yeah, to this day, this is my favorite song off both of the albums. It is just a perfectly formed epic. I have nothing else to say about it. Mark, Estranged.
Again, piano playing fantastic by Axl. I think he even credits saying thank you very much to Slash for his fantastic guitar playing in this song. And it's true, those little melody lines that he puts in there, some of them are so un-Slash-like, but that's what makes them so fantastic. Those little half bends that he does in there is just really cool. It's just outside of his sort of bluesy spectrum, but I really love it. It's just a great performance. And the video, again, is one of those $7 million masterpieces that I enjoy watching very much.
Nice. Lonnie, Estranged.
No, it's great. It's another epic song on here, 9 minutes long. Matt's drumming really stands out to me on the song, as does Slash's guitar playing. Slash's guitar playing just it's so bluesy, and the way he does the dolphin type feel to it, even that was obviously planned out for a long time with how the dolphins appear in the video. 2.5 years later, and the video finally comes out for the song. It's lyrical genius again, and it's guitar playing, and there's so many layers to it. It's like November Rain almost in a way, but there's so many layers to the song, like there is with November Rain, and it's all part of the trilogy of videos with Don't Cry, November Rain, and Estranged. And Estranged was the cap on them all. So there's a lot going on in the video. There's a lot going on in the song, and it's great. It's one they have to play every night because it is epic.
Yeah. Every time anyone said layers today, I've always thought of Shrek talking about onions. Ken.
The mind of Julian Gill.
Yeah, like you guys say. I wrote down the epic song. To me, it's like November Rain Part 2, or November Rain Junior, whatever you want to call it, but not quite as good as November Rain, but it's pretty darn close, and it's another cool big song, thematic, that's really good.
Yeah. All right, now we're into the last two, Breakdown. I did not pick this, and the rest of you did, so it's all your fault.
What's wrong with you?
Let me hear you now. Let me hear you now.
Great.
Let me hear you. I hate those fucking vocal overdubs.
Let me hear you now.
The call-outs. It's the
the guy who loves Kiss, he says he hates Let Me Hear You.
Yeah, wonder why. People, let me hear you now. It has a great solo, but I was always put off by the intro because the intro to this song reminds me of why I hate Cinderella's Heartbreak Station so much, and the outro voice action is just annoying as fucking hell. So now the three of you can all gang up and tell me why it's such a great song. Mark, please commence.
Wow, I think the intro to this song is one of the things that immediately hooked me of this song. That whole thing at the beginning is so good with that banjo and that whistling too on there. I mean, he made it cool to whistle again. Not since Jeff Tate has it been cool to whistle.
Not since Patience 3 years ago had it been cool to whistle.
Yeah, But hey, I mean, I think people. I think at that point people have associated the whistle to him too, right? I mean, before it was tied back to Jeff Tate, long before Axl was doing it, and I just think it's a great song. I mean, when it comes out of that part, that intro piano part is so great in there, and that singing that he does at the top there is so good. I just think it's just another strongly written song. And yeah, sure, they could have gotten away without that "let me hear you now" bit every time. I think maybe once it would have been okay to get away with it, but doing it as many times as they did, I think it was just overkill a bit. But I still think it's one of my favorite songs on there. I really love this song.
Yeah, some shit's supposed to be left on the cutting room floor. Ken, your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Let me hear you. I agree. It's a little bit overdone, obviously. The big thing for me about it is I like the. It's funny. It's called breakdown, but I like the breakdown in the middle of the song where the change. I think it's fantastic change up in the song. That's what makes it cool. That's why I put it on my list. Otherwise, had it not had that in it, I probably would have, inserted a different song. But yeah, it's a good rock song.
Yep, Lonnie.
Julian's so wrong. And this song really speaks volumes to me. I mentioned earlier in the show how I bought these albums, the day they came out. I couldn't wait for them. And, since 1991 until now, these albums and these songs have meant different things to me from the 12-year-old who bought them in September of 91 until now. And they've meant different things to me at different periods in my life. And this song in particular, really speaks to a very difficult time in my life, in around the mid 2000s. You guys, this is like you got to listen to the whole episode. You guys don't even know this about me. I used to be married and I got divorced in 2004, and this song is about wanting to find love and doing what it takes, getting burned, going out into the cold to search for true love, getting hurt, and going back for more because you are going to find it. And he's come to know the cold of being alone. He thinks of it as home. That speaks volumes to me from who I was from about 2004 until about 2011. And I love this song because it was something, it was a driving force for me for a long time. And it means a lot. It means a lot. And it didn't mean a lot to me prior to that, but prior to 2004. And it means a lot to me now. And it meant a lot to me at the time. And it still does. How the guy in the song, he is relentless looking for what he wants until he finds it, willing to get burned, willing to take a chance, and that's good for anyone too. So I love the lyrics of this. And again, I go back to lyrics, and that's one of the reasons why I love Guns N' Roses so much. It's one thing I've gone back to repetitively is lyrics, and the song really, really speaks to me, and that's why I love it.
That is the power of music. I mean, you just illustrated it perfectly. Mark's illustrated it during this episode with, one of his recollections of a song and a memory that's associated with it. This, is a totally different one. But that is the power of the fucking music that we listen to. Whatever band we discuss on this show, it's always going to be the same. That there are strong and powerful emotions attached to some songs. Some of them are painful. Some of them are happy. They run the gamut of all the emotions that we feel. Let's go into the final song on our list, and it is one that we've already talked about. You Could Be Mine. I've already said everything I need to say about it earlier. Anyone have anything to add on that? Ken, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it was that lead off song, and like Lonnie said at the beginning of the show here, about the video. It was just a great video that went along with it. Just a great song. So I think it was a great lead-in for this album, or the right song to choose as the first one, especially after coming off of, if you Appetite for Destruction. It's another song that's a little bit closer to that style. So I think they had to start off with a pretty good rocker like that. And hey, it's a catchy song. I always enjoyed it from the beginning when I first heard it. So good song.
Nice. Mark.
Again, a great example of the fantastic chorused bass of Duff McKagan on this song, right from the very top. The drum beat is epic. Lots of drummers after that started doing that in earnest. I remember lots of drummers when I was jamming and going to shows at sound check. You would hear every drummer and their brother doing that as part of the sound check, that little drum bit. And a little interesting part for you guitar players out there who are following along, yes, he is known for the Gibson Les Paul, but this is the one song where he pulled out the BC Rich Mockingbird guitar for this in studio and live. And if you really wanted to hear a good story about the BC Rich guitar, in Slash's book, he had a great fight with Paul Stanley about a BC Rich guitar. Look that up.
Nice. Lonnie.
Great song. Could have fit well on Appetite, but it was the perfect song to be the lead-off single for the Use Your Illusion album to bridge from Appetite to what we got on Use Your Illusions. And the video is incredible, and it's an epic video. Just a great commercial for Terminator 2 and how good that movie is. So it has this great driving force to it, and it's what we mentioned about Pretty Tied Up, that kind of sounds like it belongs on Appetite, and so does this. But it's also one of the rockers from start to finish as well. It just has a good rock beat from the very beginning to the very end. Doesn't slow down in the middle, doesn't start slow, nothing. It's just straight ahead, in your face rock music, just like Appetite is. So it's a perfect song to lead off, and it's one of my favorite Guns N' Roses songs.
Perfect. If we'd, when I did all the math and, ranked all our picks, we would have had a Japanese bonus track for song number 13. Would have been 14 years for anyone who cares. Before we wrap up, let's just talk about the singles, that we would have picked for this album. What would have been your lead-off single? Just pick one song that you think would have been a perfect representation of where the band was going, or what you think would have worked the best. Ken?
Well, I think You Could Be Mine was the perfect lead-off single, which kind of we alluded to. And I think even Lonnie was just saying that was a perfect tie-in coming from Appetite to the new album. So I agree with that single. I think it was the right choice at the time. Yep,
hard to go wrong with that. Mark, what's your thought on that?
I think You Could Be Mine is a great song. I picked Bad Obsession. I think that while it's more of a rock song, I think it would have probably maybe hooked a little bit more people, in my opinion. But no, I mean, You Could Be Mine is a great song, and it captured everybody. But because it's a little bit more on the hard rock metal side, and Bad Obsession is a little bit more in the straight rock Stones thing, I thought it might have hooked in a bit more people. But there's no wrong choice, I think, in this category. I think that the singles that they picked were fantastic.
Yeah, good thoughts there. Lonnie?
Yeah, You Could Be Mine to me is the perfect lead-in track to the albums. I mean, the liner notes in Appetite even say, "With your bitch slap rapping and your cocaine tongue, you get nothing done." So I mean, the song's even referenced in Appetite. So how can you not have that be the lead-off song for the next album? It's perfect.
Yeah, I would have gone with something that could make people think a little bit more, something like Pretty Tied Up. Yeah, a little bit talking. Yeah, Guns N' Roses is back, bitches. All right, we've chosen our Delusion. If you were to pick 12 songs from both of these albums to compile your own playlist or whatever, what would they be? Join the conversation wherever you've watched or listened to this show on YouTube, on iTunes, and Podchaser, and elsewhere. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to do a playlist on Spotify. We've banned most of our favorite podcasts recently, but we'll still use their free music for you to be able to listen to our version of Choose Your Delusion. But for now, from Ken, from Mark, Lonnie, and myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Look, It's Rock and Roll podcast. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, like us, or even leave us a review. You can find us and join the conversation on Facebook.